So he ends this particular chapter by asking the question, why would God allow us to get it wrong? Right? The believers often attributes the success of science to God. The question is, yes, but science isn't always successful, and we get it wrong so many times. So why, if indeed God is allowing us to do that, why do we get it wrong so many times, right? And so he says, well, if God's designer designed us in the cosmos, why make it so hard for creatures like us to get to the truth, right? Another way of looking at this is we should be extremely grateful, he said. So, right? So it's hard, but on the other side of the coin is we do, at least to a certain extent, are able to understand and know what's going on. And so he says we should be extremely grateful for how far we have come in science, even if we're far from the journey's end. We look at science as something extremely difficult, but it could have easily been much more, even more difficult, even impossible. There's absolutely no doubt that the current science works better than the science of a few centuries ago, and we've learned that. So, we can say, well, why is it so hard, or why do we get it wrong if God designed us this way? Well, he's suggesting that, but we have gotten it right, to a certain extent. And so we should be grateful for that portion of it, right? The other side of the coin.
Yeah. You don't really want to go from swords to atom bombs in a single leap,
right?
Especially in a short period of time, because then you're not learning about, okay, well, swords, look at the battlefield and look at the blood and the bodies that are there at the massive scale, because we have, 60,000 men because we need that against the other 30,000, and we've just slaughtered a bunch of people. But then to say, oh, within a flip of a switch, I can take out entire cities based on that. There's should be an attempt to learn from kind of our mistakes or where we came from, and we have this understanding too, even within in our own world, of saying, look at the 1% of all wealth owners. Those who work and become the millionaires and billionaires, they're the ones that kind of are good at keeping their money. Their children's generations and their children's generation are the ones who are most likely, out of everybody in the entire economic spectrum, to drop down out of their out of their economic class, because they didn't have to start with zero and
struggle to get it.
So here's the survival of the fittest right here.
Yeah.
Is right. It's always asking that other question. It's not why would God allow this, but
so that's kind of an evolutionary account of scientific theories, right?
yeah. In fact, he goes on to say our scientific theories evolve because they were designed by us.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. So in any case, and here's the end of it here. Patience is a virtue, so is skepticism. He says, all of us should be skeptical about the claim that science has shown that God doesn't exist. Even if there were a scientific argument against God, we would do well to be skeptical of it, since there are good reasons to doubt the truth of the scientific premises themselves, right? So, so that's really the bottom line here with regard to this particular theory.
But that doesn't stop other scientists from attempting to go outside of their natural bounds and tell us that God doesn't exist.
Right, and then he's going to, the next chapter, then he's going to look again at a couple of scientists that try to do that, right?
Yes, because once again, the scientists and politicians of today are the new priests that are attempting to convert us to Dawkinism.
So it's extremely difficult to get physics-based metaphysical answers.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah, right. And so the question is whether or not God exists is a metaphysical question, and the take on this chapter is how difficult that is to try to use physics to get there. In fact, we probably can't do that.
All right, and we even see that within the Gospels. Jesus does all these miracles in front of the Pharisees, and then they say, well, all right, I believe that those exist and people have been healed, but it's really because of this other thing that he's got the spirit of Beelzebub in him. And so even with a physical understanding of seeing isn't always believing. In fact, that's again what the Bible talks about, is what presuppositionalism kind of preaches on the back end, is you're not dividing camps into these are your evidences and these are my evidences. It says, no, everything is in God's evidence, and it's through our worldview that is given to us by God when he changes us from hearts of stone to hearts of flesh. He gives us, he makes us a new creation. We put off the old man, we put on the new. it's through that understanding that we have the appropriate understanding of looking at the world as God intends us to it, as He wants us to see it, and it's through His objective standard of science and His way of thinking, what we call logic, and through His morality. That's how we exist in harmony with what the world is. And ultimately, if there is a God, then we should live according to what His standards are.
Yeah, good. Well said.